Welcome back to this already the final segment of The Price of Business for this Tuesday morning. Hope you're having a super fantastic day. I know I am. Spending some time talking to you about you and your business. I'm sure you heard about in California, the Beverly Hills Hotel is owned by a believer and adherent of Shariah Law, and people have just come to realize that, and the crazy folks of Hollywood have all of a sudden looked up Shariah Law. They just thought since it was anti-American that it had to be good, right? If it's anti-American, it has to be good. Then they looked it up and they said, oh my goodness, this is terrible. You know, they want to, of course, the Shariah Law, among the things they want to do is stone and kill and do other kinds of things to homosexuals and the list goes on. You know, it's equally brutal to Christians as well. For those who might think, oh, that might work. That
was a selling point.
Yeah, right. That was a selling point for those who are so inclined, but it's not. It's really anti-Judeo-Christian if you get right down to it on so many fronts, and it's interesting to see that. You brought this story, by the way, to my attention, Sigmund.
Yeah, it's anti-humanity is what it really is. I mean, Sharia law is very hard on women and homosexuals, among many other groups, and Hollywood can't tolerate that.
No,
but it's really not a my backyard issue. They didn't even care that Sharia law has been making inroads in our banking industry for years now. Bank of America, among others, Kevin, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, has actually opened up whole divisions devoted to making loans that are Sharia law compliant. Did you know that?
I had no idea.
Yep. Bank of America is making loans that are Sharia law compliant, and they're trying to earn the business of the adherents of Sharia law. The problem is, this nation is a nation of laws, right? Rule by law, rule of law.
Yeah.
Yeah, not Sharia law.
Right. Yeah, I just noticed here Kim Kardashian has canceled her bridal shower. I thought she was already married. Well, she just had a baby. I get so confused now in our culture. You have babies first, and you may or may not get married.
Right. Well, and it's a Kardashian anyway. But the point is, the Hollywood elitists who are now up in arms and freaking out about this hotel being owned by adherents to Sharia law. Folks, conservatives have been railing out against Sharia law for decades. And now, just now, we're starting to hear about it from, the kvetchers in chief on the left in the Hollywood. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's really quite interesting that this kind of thing happens. But don't you concur? That the Hollywood elite has been really quick to embrace anything anti-American.
Oh yeah,
and then they would figure out later. Oh, wait a minute! Now I see why this is anti-me too.
Sean Penn.
They're so moronic. It's unbelievable.
Sean Penn is still out there beating the drum for Hugo Chavez and those guys. He's saying that whoever Chavez's successor is has got a really hard road to hoe, and he's very sympathetic to the cause, Kevin, and a lot of Hollywood liberal elites are. Danny Glover and Tim Robbins and Susan Sarandon and Matt Damon and all these people. But listen, they've been saying that conservatives have a war on women, that conservatives hate gays. They have no idea what a war on women really looks like, or hating gays really looks like, until they go to a country that is ruled by Sharia law, where gays are stoned to death, where they're imprisoned, they're killed on a regular basis, they're ostracized, women have no rights to speak of, yet they think that because we don't believe that abortion on demand is a good idea, especially in late term, that's a war on women. Mm-hmm. They believe that because we're not necessarily for gay marriage or for having bathrooms where men can go into women's bathrooms without any consequence, that somehow we have a war against gays. We hate gays.
Right.
That's not true. Now, are there people in the parties with a conservative bent that do hate gays and do think poorly of women? I'm sure there are. But look at what's happening in countries all around the world where Sharia law is prevalent. And you talk about human rights violations. Those are the ones to go after, not conservatives, not Tea Party members.
It seems like, by the way, this Sheikh guy, he's owned, his family has owned this hotel since 1987.
Right. And just now.
It took them this long to figure it, but they're real quick in their feet, those Hollywood elite, aren't they?
Well, I don't remember in the story what the details were that really brought this to light, because there had to have been a catalyst.
Yeah, there was. He made some kind of announcement about death penalty for gays, but that's only, he's always had that. It sparked controversy in April 2014 when he approved imposing the death penalty by stoning for those convicted of homosexual acts in Brunei.
Okay.
But he's always had that.
But he's the Sultan of Brunei, right? So that's happening in another country.
Which is not quite as cool as the Duke of Earl, but the name still kind of resonates.
Well, and that's happening in a different country, right? So I'm still wondering how in the world it trickled over here, because, now with Boko Haram in Nigeria, it took being, almost 300 girls being kidnapped
before
and
people woke
sold
up
into
to how
slavery.
horrific that group is. And, it was like an afterthought. It was like trying to shake the government up. This is huge. This isn't little. This is a bit, they're so used to this kind of activity happening all the time. They were kind of like, this is 300 women. And I had a conversation, interestingly, at church yesterday with someone who told me, it's interesting that they are spending how much money to just find an airplane that they know has crashed somewhere, right, but they're not really willing to put in some serious resources to recover these 300 girls?
Right. I know, it's sickening, and we've been talking out against terrorist groups like Boko Haram for a long time, and why? Because they hate girls, women. They treat them horribly. They hate gays. They treat them horribly. We've been looking out for the interests of women and gays for a long time, but we've been vilified by the left, by the same people who now are railing out against it.
That's a great point. The reality is that they beat up on the the Christians who have ruled here for eons. It's been the dominant worldview, but we have had the most humane treatment of homosexuals for generations.
Yeah.
Even when we used to treat it until 1973, I believe it was still treated as a mental illness. It was recognized as a mental illness until very recently. But still, even that.
When were they getting rounded up and tortured and stoned to death? No. And are there bad individuals out there that act horribly towards homosexuals?
Absolutely.
Or towards, of course. But
some of them are the same people who are mistreating Christians, by the way.
Yeah, but as a group, Kevin, the conservatives have been saying, look, we need to stop Shariah law. We can't let it get a foothold here in America. Look at Dearborn, Michigan.
Yep.
There's an entire culture of Islam in Dearborn, Michigan that has taken over that town. And the fellows in New York, the liberals in New York, are more worried about the Hasidim, the Hasidic Jews, trying to take basically away the lunch money to start, expanding their settlements up in New York. They're more worried about that than Shariah law coming into to Dearborn, Michigan, and other places in Michigan. And it's frightening because Shariah law has really, really horrible consequences for our freedom here if allowed to gain a foothold.
Yeah.
We can't let it happen.
Can't let it happen. This is, by the way, that kind of totalitarianism, that's what Sharia law is, always happens wherever chaos is. Places around Detroit, including Dearborn, have been under chaos for quite some time, although that's a very affluent neighborhood, Dearborn historically has been. Great things going on in Michigan, but this is not one of them. Got to wrap it up. Thanks so much. I am Kevin Price. Great Tuesday. Enjoyed it with you. Talked about a whole bunch of stuff, which is what I can do because it's my show. This is The Price of Business. Hope you have a great day. Listen to the rest of the excellent shows right here on this station.